Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rising Stories podcast. I'm Corrine Sandifer, your host, and I'm thrilled that you are here. If you are new to this podcast, let me tell you a bit about the show. Each week, I interview a business owner or author, and we chat about all things business or all things how they became authors. But you don't have to be a business owner or author to enjoy the show, because we talk about all kinds of things. And as these women share their stories with us, it's my hope that you will be encouraged to live out your story. So please spread the word and tell others about this podcast. If you get a minute, head over to iTunes and leave me a comment and tell me how much you like the podcast. This helps others find the show. My guest today is Jenni Catron. She is an author, speaker, and leadership coach. She has spoken at conferences such as Propel and She Leads. Her latest book is The 4 Dimensions of Extraordinary Leadership. Jenni's passion is to lead well and encourage others to do the same. Her commitment to that comes through in my interview with her today. Jenni gives leaders a great challenge on grace. If you are listening and you want to send a message to Jenni or myself, head over to Twitter, and I'm at Corrine Sandifer, and Jenni is at Jenni Catron. You can also follow me on Instagram for more information on my podcast guests. Stay tuned to the end because I'm going to tell you how you can win a copy of Jenni's latest book. Here's my conversation with Jenni.
Well, and it's a funny little mix of stuff, but I do some speaking at both conferences and often do a lot of speaking at organizations on leadership development and have written a few books on it. I'm kind of a self-proclaimed leadership junkie. I love all things leadership. So I just love when I'm able to invest in other leaders and help them lead from their extraordinary best. So it takes all shapes, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now tell me, what are the books that you've written?
Sure. Yeah, I wrote most recently, my most recent book is a book called The 4 Dimensions of Extraordinary Leadership. And the subtitle is The Power of Leading from Your Heart, Soul, Mind, and Strength. And that really takes a holistic approach of leadership, of what does it mean to lead from a relational perspective, a spiritual perspective, a strategic perspective, and with good vision. And the premise of that is that great leaders really learn to lead from all 4 of those dimensions. So that's the most recent book, and it's been a lot of fun just helping leaders kind of unlock, those 4 dimensions and see the growth that happens because of that. Before that, I wrote a book called Clout, Discover and Unleash Your God-Given Influence. And that book was kind of the precursor to the most recent book because it was a lot about how do we really understand our unique identity as leaders and what are the things that kind of trip us up and hold us back. So whether it's fear or insecurity or pride or, just those dark sides of leadership and helping us figure out how do we deal with those so we can really lead well. So that was a much more personal development leadership book. And then even previous to that, I co-wrote a book for women leaders in church and ministry leadership called Just Lead. And I wrote that with a woman named Sherry Surratt. So I was one of those kids who always dreamed of writing a book but never thought it would become a reality. And it's just been such a joy to be able to do that.
That's so neat. So when you were young, were you thinking, did you write anything when you were young, like short stories and stuff? Because I used to do that myself.
I did. Yeah, I can remember, I think I was in 3rd grade, and I had confiscated this old filing cabinet that had a lock and key from my grandmother. I had found this and it was my treasure. So I put it in my closet, and I remember having a manuscript of a novel as a 3rd grader that I would write, and I would put the pages in that filing cabinet so nobody could get to it. I have no idea what happened to that little book. Yeah. I'm sure it was horrible, but I can remember that really vividly. That was one of my dreams as a kid, was to be a writer. And I specifically remember whatever novel I was writing at that time, I had all those pages locked away, and I was tediously working on it. But
that is so cute. Wow. Wouldn't that be fun if you found that, if you could?
I'm sure it's in my grandparents' basement or something, and I just have to go find it. You know?
You should get it. That would be cute. So, that was so, when you have those dreams as children, because I work with sometimes a lot of empty nesters, and they're I don't know what to do. What's my next, step? And I always ask them, what was it that when you were young and a kid that you just did
Yes.
for hours and just
Yes.
didn't think about the time? And
Exactly. It's
it's,
such a good indication of some of those early dreams that we have.
yes, yeah. How fun that,
Yeah.
I had an old typewriter. I used to take stories from the newspaper and like rewrite them. It was kind
I
of
love
crazy.
it.
And
Yeah,
just
that's so
put,
great.
I would always put wonderful endings to all the stories, especially the
Good.
bad ones. I decided I
That's
was going to
great.
make them better. But so what got you involved in like what background do you have that started you on this road of leadership consultant and
Yeah.
helping leaders,
Yeah.
be better?
Yeah, I think the catalyst for me, so quick backstory, I went to Nashville, Tennessee to work in the music business, specifically at a Christian record label. And that was my dream job since I was like 13 years old. I had said I wanted to work for, it was at the time a company called Forefront Records. And that was just my dream. So I, went to college, got an internship at Forefront, worked there for about 9 years and did artist development and brand development. So I really took like the artist vision and helped lead the marketing team to accomplish that. And so just a absolutely fun job. But what I discovered in there, I remember I was about 22 or 23 and I had been promoted to a position of manager and I had my first employee who, reported to me. And a couple weeks in, like I was frustrated with this employee. I had given him like all the instruction of how to do the work and what to do and how to do it. And, I'm a firstborn, very A type. So you can imagine at 22, I was kind of a terror, to work for. And a couple weeks in, this employee was not meeting my expectations and I was frustrated. He was frustrated, like it just wasn't working out. And I went to my boss and said, hey, this employee isn't working. We're going to have to do something different. He's just not cutting it. This isn't going to work. And I fully expected him to my boss to be, of course, Jenny, whatever you need, we'll make it right. You're the golden child. And instead he looked at me and he said, Jenny, if you want to work with widgets, go work in a factory. But if you want to work with people, you're going to have to learn how to love them and how to lead them. And it was such a revelation to me that leadership was so much more and in this case, managing another employee was not about just, barking orders to them. It was about really drawing out their gifts and helping figure out how to let their best ideas emerge and together how to accomplish the vision, the responsibilities that we had. But if I just wanted to bark orders, that was not going to be leadership. It was going to be poor management at its best. And so it really impressed upon me that this idea of leadership was different than I had ever looked at it before, and that I really needed to figure out how to bring out the best of others and then pair that with the needs of the organization. And when you can do that, extraordinary things happen. So I went on a journey to figure out, what does leadership mean? What does good leadership look like? And I had been led well, like that boss of mine, he was the VP of Forefront at the time. He was an extraordinary leader, led me really well, but I realized I didn't know how to replicate that. And so I needed to figure out, how do I become a great leader? How do I really invest in people and draw out their best? And so it just birthed in me this extraordinary passion for leadership. And I just started reading everything I could. I had a little journal that I would keep in my desk. And every time I would run into a leadership example, whether it was me not leading well or it was somebody not leading me well, I would document it because I wanted to learn from it. I just became this crazy student of leadership. And that passion has just continued on for a couple decades now.
Yeah. And so by writing those things down, I think that was the beginning of your books, right?
It really was. Yes.
I mean, you had a foundation there because you were documenting. I just think that's so important when we are on this journey to whatever God is leading us to or wherever we are supposed to be, that we, document things and just remember stuff that's happening in our own lives, because that's where we learn and that's where we get our material, I think, as writers.
Totally. Yeah. And and I didn't even know, but I wanted to remember. I can remember sometimes when I would be in a situation that I felt like somebody didn't handle well. And I would document it not to be angsty or a know-it-all, but more to go, I want to remember what this feels like when I'm in that leader's shoes and I'm leading somebody through something. I want to remember what they were thinking and feeling. And I go back to that journal, Corrine, all the time.
Oh, wow.
Like, I go back and I will reread that and go, wow, this is how I'm making my team feel right now, you know? And is there something I can do different, or do I just need to trust that, you know, because now I have a lot more grace for my leaders too, because I recognize now that I sit in some of the seats that they sat in, I recognize, okay, they were dealing with so much more than my little 23-year-old mind knew. And I didn't have full understanding of what they were navigating. So I would often tell young leaders, hey, give your leaders sometimes the benefit of the doubt, because they might be navigating a bit much bigger picture. And it's not that they're trying to be, you know, difficult with you. They're navigating a much more complex picture. And then I will also tell this more senior leader, hey, be mindful of how your employees feel or how the people you lead feel when you're having to give them instruction, direction, et cetera. And I think just trying to seek that shared understanding, you know, is just so valuable.
Yeah. And just that compassion and being able to relate. And that human connection, like you were talking about earlier, there was no human connection, or not that there wasn't any when you were had that first employee, but it was, you know, you recognize that, you know, your boss recognized you're not connecting. There's this disconnect, and it's tough being thrown into a leadership position without knowing how to step into those shoes. I mean, it's kind of trial and error sometimes.
It is. And, you know, and the thing is, a lot of times we're navigating so much, we're barely keeping our own head above the water, you know, and this is, you know, and for a lot of the folks who are leading their own businesses and things like this year, I launched my own business and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got a whole new landscape that I'm trying to navigate. And the other day I realized I have a couple of part-time employees who work with me, and I realized I'm not leading them well. Like, I'm just barely like figuring it out, because, you know, those of you who are business owners, you know, the first year it's like chaos, you know, you're just like, your head is spinning trying to figure out how to do all of this. And it dawned on me the other day, I'm like, here I am, this person who, you know, is always speaking, teaching on leadership. And I'm recognizing that I'm working so hard to keep myself above water that I haven't been paying enough attention to my team and making sure I'm equipping them and seeing what's going on with them. And so leadership is hard work. You know, I tell people all the time, like, this is not for the faint of heart. It is hard work, but it's so incredibly rewarding. And we all know what it looks like when we've been led well or we've been led poorly.
Yes.
And we know what it feels, that impact feels like. So I feel like if leaders can keep that at the top of their mind and recognize, man, we have extraordinary influence on people. And when we can use that influence for good, I think our leadership legacy will be beautiful.
And just getting in that mindset. And I think I think that's why your books are so popular, is just getting in that mindset, reading all you can, like, just like you did, you know, just being learners and being open to doing things differently than what you're thinking it should be, you know, the way you think it should run. Because like you said, you know, we're thrown into this, you know, having employees and having people answer to us, and we're trying to keep our head above water, but at the same time, they're waiting on us to lead. And so we've got to step in those shoes right away, and at least, you know, take them part of the way. You know, I think once you do that, I think that, you know, good employees and good leaders themselves will come out and they'll be able to meet you the other way, the other half, but at least making an effort.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of that realization. I don't know if this is a good analogy or a bad analogy, but it just works for me, that I often think, you know, as a leader, we always have to be in the front. And I always envision myself with this big machete, and there's this big overgrown field in front of me. And my job as the leader is to be just a couple steps ahead of the rest of the team, figuring out which way do we need to go. And I've got that machete just clearing the brush, you know, just trying to clear the way. And it still might be a messy way. Like, it's still not going to be this smoothly paved path, but at least I'm making it a little smoother for the people who are coming behind me. And if I can do that, I mean, what a gift for others, that I can just make the way a little smoother, and I can help us determine which way are we going, and reminding them, why are we going there? And so I think as leaders, it's like, we don't have to be like leaps ahead of everybody. We just have to be a couple steps ahead to help give clarity to where we're going. And that's just it. I think when the people we lead know that we believe in them and that we want them with us, like they're willing to go do the hard stuff too. They don't need you to have it all figured out. They just need you to kind of have a sense of where we're going and confidence that we're going the way we need to go. And then they're great young leaders are going to join in with you and be excited to share the vision with you.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that's why that show, what is it called, where the bosses go behind the scenes and
Undercover Boss.
Yes, Undercover
I
Boss.
love that show. Yes.
And you realize, I mean, we're not alone, because even the top executives, I mean, they have no idea what's going on in their companies half the time.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's so good, you just, for the from the bottom to the top, it's good to see that, they're disconnected, but yet just the whole show about them connecting and going, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was happening.
Exactly.
And I get it,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. It's when leaders, again, just are, I love that show just because it shows the heart of leaders wanting to be in touch with what's really going on in their organizations. And I think that's where you get a disconnect between a leader and their team, is if the team doesn't feel like the leader has any understanding of what it takes to do what we're doing, and I for a lot of my career, I've been kind of in number 2 seats, and so I've been alongside a great visionary who had a big vision for what we were doing. And I would often consider myself the translator or the bridge, that I'd have to help the rest of the team, understand the vision and then help them figure out how to get it done. And I'd have to help that visionary understand the reality of what it was taking the team to do the work, So I always felt like I was this translator in the in-between, helping both communicate between the visionary and the rest of the staff of going, okay, here's the big vision, here's where we're going, why we're going there, and helping the team kind of understand that, and then helping that leader understand, okay, but here's what it's taking the team to accomplish that big vision. And, again, I think when we can recognize sometimes as leaders, we have to just make sure we're connecting the dots, that people understand, it's all about understanding the why. Simon Sinek wrote a great book called Start With Why, and I think it's just a great reminder of kind of something that's just core to leadership, is that people need to know why. They need to know where they're going and why they're going there and why it matters. And then they'll do the hard thing. Then they'll come with us and they'll do the hard thing if they understand and capture the why.
So do you consult business owners to discover what is your why?
That will often be a part of it. So I when I'm working with businesses or nonprofits, I work with both. I'll come in and I do a lot of assessment on culture and strategy. And, strategy really is fulfillment of the why, so I'm looking at the culture of the team, because oftentimes organizations will have great strategy, but they will lack, their culture will be deteriorating. Their leadership might be struggling. They may not have good team dynamics. And so, and this is an old famous quote of, culture eats strategy for breakfast every day, And so my heartbeat is to go, what's going on with that leader and that team? And then we can build a strategy, we can execute that, we can make that happen. But if our culture is terrible, everything else is irrelevant. And so I will go in and we'll do an assessment of that. And sometimes what we discover is, we haven't clarified the why. We have a strategy, but the strategy might not be effective because it's not actually helping us accomplish the core thing that we really feel called to. And so it does a lot when I'm working with organizations, 9 times out of 10, we're going to discover, okay, there might be some clarity on the why that we've got to shore up, because then sometimes culture just naturally, the team naturally follows that. That's clearer, and then the strategy follows that very easily. So it's certainly at the core of it.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's exciting that you are working with leaders and nonprofits to do that, because it's needed, because you want to see them succeed, and
totally.
They've got to have a plan,
And what I'm finding is that so many, especially in the small business and nonprofit world, that, somebody starts their organization or their business because they're passionate about what they're doing, right? So they're incredibly passionate about what they're doing. They get some momentum, they see some growth, and before long, they've got this organization, this business to manage, and they're not doing the very thing they first started out to do, which was what they loved, And, I was talking to a girl last week who started an online fashion business. And she started it because she loved fashion. Well, all of a sudden she's got, P&Ls to manage and staff to oversee and, product shipment issues she's trying to navigate. And then they lose heart and they lose hope. They lose sight of the why, because they started it because they wanted to, offer great fashion and, and inspire people. And then all of a sudden it's just this behemoth to manage and they've lost their way. And how in the world would they actually inspire the rest of their team if they're not feeling inspired? So those are the organizations I love to go in and serve, because I want to help that leader get re-inspired for what they started out to do and help give them the tools. I say every great leader needs a coach. And in this day and age where we have technology that helps us grow things at a rapid pace, like change and growth are just rapid speed. Right. And so we barely can keep up with that. It's like you can look back in history and we didn't, oftentimes we were able to grow with the organization, like our own personal growth and development could happen along with the organization's growth. Well, now what you see organizations able to exponentially grow. And as a leader, wisdom comes from time and experience. And so you get like thrown into the deep end of this rapidly growing thing. And all of a sudden you feel inadequate, you feel inept, because the growth that you need to be able to keep pace with the organization, they don't happen at the same pace. And so I think this is why we're seeing more and more business consultants and just coaches coming alongside great leaders, because you just need an extra boost sometimes to help get you through. I call it the critical moment. What's the critical moment your organization is facing? And sometimes you need just a little extra support in that season to help you, get through that.
Yeah. And, there are sometimes, I know I do what you do, but on a very smaller scale with a lot less people. But, I talked with one person that had a business and she just decided not to go big. Yeah. And, because like you were saying, she really loved doing this one, the very grassroots of what she was doing. And she said, you know what, I'm not going to grow anymore. This is what I want to do. I'm only going to do so many, sales or so many things because I just want to keep it small. And, some people, are just to discover that's freeing. It's freedom.
Totally.
To get, the tools that you're providing, that you're showing these leaders is just freedom to be, okay, well, this is your sweet spot. You need to start working in that and just pass everything else on to whoever else needs to do it, let them work in their skills and passions and you work in yours. And that's just, and like you said, in a society, gosh, in a New York minute, seems like people just go viral and their businesses explode. Yes. And then they have to start hiring people and managing this and managing that. And so so glad you wrote that book, because it's very helpful to people who are starting out and have these business, especially millennials. They have, not all of them, but some of them don't have the training to, haven't had any type of managerial experiences. Maybe they've worked as a waitress or, other, just right out of college, and all of a sudden they are faced with all of this.
Yeah. And they know how to use all the technology and the social media to grow things rapidly. And then, because that's just what they know. But then all of a sudden they're like, this thing has become crazy. And I haven't had the business experience or the leadership experience to know how to navigate all the complexities that come with it. And and so that's so much my heart. And I think that's why people like yourself and myself are able to support organizations and leaders like this, because it like they say, it takes a village. Like, we've got to be leading in and helping each other out, because, we want we want your passion to succeed. That, that's the thing I'm always talking to leaders about is like, I think you have that passion, that vision for something because that's God given. But he does design us to be in community and to work together to accomplish that. And so when we can support each other in those ways, I think then beautiful things can happen.
Mm-hmm. And those employees and those people that you are managing and being the boss to are shaping who you are as well, and are going to make you a much better person, mom, wife, employee in the future, and everything else. So, well, tell me, Jenny, tell me a day in the life of Jenny. What do you do? What goes on? I know it's different, but let's say you're not traveling and you're home. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good distinction because it's like I'm either out traveling and that'll either be I'm speaking at a conference or I'm working with a client, but then when I'm home, it's usually a lot of administration and catch up is honestly the deal. And even when we were scheduling this, I was like, okay, do I need to be video ready? Because when I have a day at home that's just like work catch up, I get up early and I'm on the West Coast. So I will often get up and start working around 6:30 a.m. because the rest of the country is kind of already moving. And so I'll sit down for a few hours and, catch up on email and any scheduling and, travel stuff. And then I usually will go for a run, usually mid-morning or midday. I'll take my break and go out for a run and shower and then come back. And then usually I will dig into any projects that I have. So, like this weekend, I have a client that I'm working with. So I'll do all my prep work for a client this afternoon to just, review all their pre-work materials that they sent me and prepare for my time with them. Sometimes it might be I've got an article to write for my website or newsletter. Sometimes it's like I have a video curriculum that I've got to do for another partnership, and I've got to write the content for that video curriculum. So usually the mornings, and that's actually flip-flopped of my preference. My preference would be to get up and do the content development in the morning. But because I'm on the West Coast and everybody's already working ahead, I had to flip-flop that preference to go, let me get emails and calls to people in the morning when they're all up and working. And I use my afternoon to write and do writing content.
I know. Yeah. It's so much easier to get up and write in the morning. I just feel like I think it's proven. I think most writers would say that you're just fresh and you just got up from rest and working from rest is better.
Yeah, and I will use my weekends. So my husband works weekends, so our schedules are a little crazy. But I'll use my weekend time then to do my content writing because, most of the people I'm talking with aren't working and he's working. So then I'll use my weekends to do that.
Oh, that's good.
And for us, and this is, because I'm a big believer in you don't need to work 24/7, although I am a bit of a workaholic. So I'll usually pick one day during the week when I'm home that my husband is off. That's my off day. So like tomorrow, it's a Wednesday, but we're taking the day off together because he's off. I have to work this weekend. So this is our day off together this week. So it's a little bit of an adjustment after being somebody who for 2 decades worked in corporate and then ministry world full time, and we're, regular weekday hours to go, okay, I can do that. I can shift my schedule and make this work for us.
Yeah, it's kind of like people that, have work on the weekends or pastors who take Mondays off. And, my husband, he owns his own business as well. And so we often take either, Friday or sometimes it'll be on a Wednesday or Tuesday. It just depends on, how our schedules look like, but we will, and I'm going to ask you what you guys do, but what we do is, and we've done this since our kids were in preschool, we would drop them off and we would go get a quick bite, or sometimes I would sneak in a sandwich into the movie theater and we'd go watch a movie. And so we still kind of do that. We don't take food into the theater anymore, but because we have more time now, but we can, go to dinner, go to lunch. And so we do a lot of day dates because at night we're just exhausted and tired.
we're kind of the same way in that we enjoy, because I travel a lot, because he works weekend nights. And so we cherish nights just to be at home, and but we will do the same thing. We'll either, we'll pick our day of the week, and you have to be really strategic about this. And I think this is a good thing for like business owners to be aware of, is that you kind of have to fight for those times off together, because because my husband works a job and has his own business. So he has multiple things going on. And then because I travel and, and have all these things, we have to work ahead. Like I usually look a month ahead and go, okay, every week, which day are we taking off? Because it's rarely the same day that we can do. So we have to look at our schedules and kind of line them up and go, okay, this week it's Wednesday, next week it's Tuesday,
Yeah.
But like carve that out and make that time. Otherwise we will just be going in a zillion directions and never actually have time together. But then we'll do okay, we're going to go to a movie, or we do a lot of hiking together. And because we live in California right now, we're trying to enjoy every bit of the outdoors that we can. So we'll go hiking or biking, and that gives us a lot of great time to just talk and catch up. But then usually it's like, okay, and when can we be back home so we can, sit down and watch a show together, or, just hang out. So that's usually what our day off together looks like.
That sounds like fun. And do y'all have any fur babies or little ones?
We did. We had a 17-year-old border collie that passed away on us in April of this last year. And so we are like, we've never had children of our own. So that dog was like, he was our baby.
Your baby, your fur baby. Oh.
He totally was. And he lived a really good life, obviously, at 17 years old, and he died from a brain tumor. But so we anticipate we'll get another one before long, but we're kind of in between, like the place we're living, isn't like a permanent space. So we're like, okay, let's wait until we get settled into, So anyway, so that's that story. But I have two sisters who both have children, and being an aunt is like the greatest joy of my life. So
that's great. You can
that's a
spoil
fun
them.
Season.
Yeah.
I do. I spoil them and buy them all the stuff that my sisters are like, are you kidding? And it's like paybacks. My sisters are both younger than me. So I'm like, this is payback for when you tormented me as kids.
There
like now I get to spoil your kids and load them up with sugar and all the noisy toys and send them home. But
yeah, that's fun.
That's a fun role. I love that this season of life, like investing in their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell me what are some favorite apps, or one favorite app, or something that you do that you just are like, I cannot live without this. This is great. Of course, we can't live without it, obviously,
right.
But
but you find your tools and things. I think the go-to for me has been Evernote. I use that for task lists. I use that for client interactions. So, when I first engage with a client, I'm keeping all of my notes there. And then once, if they confirm, then I still keep all of my notes there, and it can integrate with so much. So, and I still don't think I use it to its maximum, but Evernote became kind of my go-to. I most recently have been playing with Nosebe a little bit, Nozbe, for task management, because you can share tasks with other team members. And so I'm playing with that, but that's brand new. So the verdict's kind of out on whether that's a good, and whether it fully takes the place of Evernote. I don't, or the task part of Evernote, because I don't know that I've fully maximized that. I'm one of those people that the technology always has more to offer than I figure out how to use.
Right.
So,
well, it takes time.
It does take time.
I mean, I just don't have that time. I know that there are so many things that I could do with, Evernote and all the other things that I have, like my calendar and all that stuff. But I just don't have time to sit down and figure it out. There's always a learning curve for everything. And
there is, yes. And once I figure out something that works, I like just to keep it. And then somebody will be like, but you know that you could do this, right? And it kills me, because I'm like, oh, yeah, I had no idea, but I didn't have time to figure that out, Well,
I tell you what, and Evernote has been the hot topic on Rising Stories. We just about maybe 3 out of the last 4 interviews I've had, we've talked about Evernote. But to me, it was a little creepy one time when I was done with a client, and I was writing some things into Evernote, actually speaking into it because it's easier for me. And that's why I'm in the business of podcasting, because I like to speak
Right.
more than I like to type out stuff. And all of a
Yep.
sudden it like jumped into mode where it knew exactly where I was, what office I was in, who I was seeing. I don't know how it happened.
Oh my
I can't
gosh.
tell you,
Yeah.
but it filled out all the information at the beginning. Like, you're talking about so and so at doctor's office, da da da. And it was like, oh my gosh,
Oh, creepy.
I was like, how did that happen? And I'm sure I connected it with something. But now I have a new phone and I don't think it's doing that anymore. So,
That's funny.
so it
Yeah, I
must
don't
have
even know.
connected with my Google Calendar or some type of
It
calendar, but
must have.
it was
Yeah,
very good and creepy at the same time.
exactly.
But I
Yeah.
was thankful I didn't have to fill all that out, and it was like, yeah, I can get into this. So I do like Evernote, and I'm gonna have to look into that, Noseby. I'll have to look into that. And right now I'm looking into Mind Body. I think that's
Okay.
what it's called, and it's like everything, like clients pay on that, and you can
Oh,
schedule
really?
and
Yeah.
um, and it's one of my friends I just met with this week. She's a yoga instructor, and so she was ranting and raving about it. And at the same time, someone had reached out to me from Mind Body and was asking me if I was interested in that, and I was like, "Oh, okay." It's always helpful when someone else is already using it, and she seemed
Yes.
to really like it a lot. I don't know if you get a lot of if you're like this, but I get tons of like you know emails and you should try this, and I
Yeah.
found you, and da da da. Anytime you
Yeah.
put coach out there, I think it's like, hey, call me,
Yes.
message me,
Exactly. Yes,
email me,
exactly.
hound me.
I know I have a rule for what I read, and I think it's becoming true about apps as well, is that somebody I trust and respect that I know well has to recommend it before I will read it.
Hmm.
And I think the same is true of apps. It's like, okay, somebody I know and trust and who I know understands who I am has to recommend something to me, like,
Hmm.
before I'm just going to try it, because there's so much time that you can invest in
Right.
trying to figure out all this stuff.
All the new
I need my
stuff.
own curator.
Hmm. Hmm. So, are you a reader yourself? Do you like to read?
Love to read. I'm kind of a geek about reading, so I'm always reading stuff. Yeah.
What are you reading these days?
I have gone back to a few of my favorites. There's a book called Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership by Ruth Haley Barton. And I've read that. I think I first read that book like 8 years ago. And it's just a fantastic book about like your own soul as a leader, like, just not losing who we are in the
Mm.
process of leadership. And so I'm rereading that. I reread it almost every year because it's just such a great book. And then I also am reading The E-Myth Revisited,
Oh,
because
yeah.
as a business owner,
Who who wrote that?
Michael Gerber,
Yes.
and it's just so helpful for a business owner to like figure out, okay, how do you do this? What do you need? So I've been diving into that, and then I also read The Coaching Habit. Have you read that?
I haven't. Mm-mm.
It's really good for those that are in kind of that leadership and coaching space. It's a really good book. That's by Michael. I'm trying to look right now at the title of it. Michael Strainer, I think is the name. But that was really good too. So those have been some of the most recent books that
Okay.
I've read. Yeah,
So that's on your nightstand, huh? That's what
it
you're
is.
reading.
Yeah,
And
that's
what
what
you,
that's what goes with me on every plane ride these days.
yeah,
Is
that's a good place to, yeah, shut everything off and read. I
Yep.
have a hard time doing that, but I do take a book with me on the plane. And so
Yeah,
it, especially when they say turn off your phones and they put it in
yeah,
airplane mode, yeah, you got to
yeah,
pull that out.
yeah. It
So,
gives me. I've kind of made that. I love to read, but I won't often give myself the space to do it. So on the plane has become a great place for me to go. Okay, I can read a couple chapters while I'm flying. So
mm-hmm.
that's kind of my little indulgence on when I'm flying.
What three things I always ask my guest, what three things you're absolutely loving and like you just
Hmm.
rave about?
Yeah. Okay. And this is mostly fun stuff, but I am a fanatic about tea. I'm not a coffee drinker at all. I love tea. And my favorite blend is a blend called Countess Grey that's made by Fortnum and Mason out of London. And so this especially makes me a tea snob because you can't buy it in the US. Like it's only available in England. And so if I order it, I have to have it shipped internationally, which is outrageous and kind of crazy. But anyway, so it's always quite and I'm sure coffee drinkers are the same way, but it's quite the journey to find like the perfect blend.
The perfect blend. Is it very smooth and just...
Yeah, it's very smooth. It has the tones of an Earl Grey, but it has a little more of a citrus to it. So it just has a really nice, like, and any, the higher end tea, the smoother it is, and it's just really good. So that's my favorite in that space. There's something else I was thinking. Other favorite things. Oh, I have been watching The Crown on Netflix,
which is too
fantastic. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, but I think I've only watched the first 2 episodes.
Okay. I'm not far ahead of you. I'm just a few more episodes ahead of you, I think. But yeah, I've always been fascinated with British history, so I'm fully enjoying that series right now. So that's kind of my little TV indulgence. And I was trying to think of what else. I think other than that, it's spoiling my nephew who is 20 months old and is just so much fun. So my big deal right now is trying to get him to say my name, which he's kind of got, but it's not completely, it's like Annie instead of Jenny, but he's getting there. So
yeah. That's so cute. What do you do with him? Do y'all go to parks or how do you spoil him?
He lives in Wisconsin and I live in California, so I only get to see him probably every couple of months, but he'll go for runs with me. I'll put him in the jogging stroller and, he loves being outside. So that's a ton of fun. And he loves to play any kind of ball. So he has a basketball hoop and he has a tennis ball that he throws like a baseball. And so, we'll go out in the yard, or if it's too cold, we'll just, take over the living room and play ball or hide and seek. And so it's whatever makes him laugh really is what I'm up to with him. Yeah.
I bet those giggles are priceless. Yeah.
Oh, so much fun.
When they're that age, it's so cute.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat with you, and I look forward to another time.
Wasn't she great? I knew you were going to love her. And when she talked about how it takes a village and that we all have to lean in and help others succeed, that was music to my ears. And she's right. We are designed to live in community. If you heard something on the show that you wanted to jot down but couldn't, no worries, because all the information about this show will be on the show notes at CorrineSandifer.com under Rising Stories Podcast. Here's the info on the giveaway, folks. All you have to do is visit my Instagram account and find the giveaways post. Hit follow if you're not already following me and tag a friend in the comments. If you don't have an Instagram account but would still like to enter to win, all you have to do is sign up for my newsletter at CorrineSandifer.com. Tune in next week when my guest will be Tiffany Bloom, who writes Bible studies for YouVersion Bible app. It's that Bible app that just about everyone has on their phone. Her study is called Flourish, 21 Ways to Thrive by 45. So make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast so you don't miss this episode. Thanks so much for listening, and keep rising in your own story.